right, let's give it up for the co-writer and director of My Father's Shadow, Akinola Davies Jr. Akinola, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon to talk about this really marvelous movie. And I wanted to start off by asking you about working on the script with your brother, who you co-wrote it with, Wale. And I understand that he actually wrote a short story that this was kind of based on that. Could you talk a little bit about all that process and like coming together with your brother to write this film about your father in a way?
Sure. First of all, thank you to everyone who's come out today. It's, like I said to Nadia before, it's such a trip showing a film on Hollywood Boulevard. It's spinning me out a little bit, but yeah, no, I'm really fortunate. I'm the youngest of four. My brother Wale, he's someone who I really admire for all intents and purposes. He's kind of been like a father figure to me. He's been very sort of protective over the years, and he basically moved back to Nigeria quite early on in a sort of crazy way for anyone who's Nigerian. He studied like business in Amsterdam, and then he told my mom he's moving back to Lagos to pursue music. And if you know Nigerian families, there was like serious panic. But he sort of stood fast, and I think what I learned through this trip is that he started writing, because he's a rapper, he's a poet, he's a music manager, but he started writing for Nigerian TV shows, which became news to me. And he said he was working with with a writing partner, and they had a prompt to write a letter to a bereaved parent, and I think he took that prompt on and he wrote the short My Father's Shadow, which was just this idea of spending a day with our dad, who unfortunately passed when I was like 20 months. He would have been 2.5, more or less. And yeah, I remember he sent it to me like no context. I remember being in bed, and it was one of the first scripts from like a non-Hollywood person I'd ever read. And yeah, I kind of broke down because I never really pictured this idea of my father being like kind of tender and vulnerable and unsure of himself. Again, if you know Nigerians, when you go to parties and stuff, which we go to a lot of, you meet people's parents and they're like, who's your father, who's your mother, and you tell them. And we'd always have these stories of, oh, we need a dad, you know, like he was this and he was that. And all those stories belong to everyone else, they never really belong to us. The one story that did belong to us was, we put it in the opening sequence. All me and Wale remember is playing on a bed with someone who we imagined was our dad, but we didn't know if we sort of like fabricated it or made it up, or if it was told to us by our older siblings. And that was the sort of the basis for sort of making this film. But yeah, you know, I'd love to take all the credit, but I have to give it to my older brother, yeah.
So on that subject of like that haziness of memory, the film is also like has a historic angle to it, because you said it during this pivotal day in Nigerian history in 1993. Was that part of the short story as well? And I think I love being a film that like takes place over the course of one day. Can you talk a little bit about that backdrop? It also kind of has this running theme of like fatherhood within the film and fatherhood within the nation of Nigeria.
Sure, yeah. No, the politics wasn't in the short. The short was literally, from what I remember of the short was, we were at home, we went into Lagos, the beach scene was mostly there, and the amusement park was a little bit there, and then we went home. But yeah, coming into this process of writing the film, you know, we needed to expand it, so we were thinking of the sort of themes within the sort of micro story, which is the voice of my father, and we sort of stumbled on this idea that, you know, for my mom always says, like, you know, my mom's like a prayer warrior, and she always says, you know, like, it's not right to sort of, what did she say? Something to the effect of like, we're the ones that will bury her, like you bury your parents, you know, like parents don't bury their kids and stuff like that. And she would always kind of, yeah, she would always sort of talk about that, and Yeah, ultimately, I think, sorry, I forgot the question.
Well, the historic setting that.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, the theme was basically fatherhood and brotherhood, and the promise of spending your life with your parents and then teaching you all these morals and ideas going through life. And we realized for the kids in the film, they never that promise was never fulfilled for them. So that was kind of the thing we were running with. And then for the macro for Nigeria, we were like, okay, we were the same age as the kids in 1993 during the sort of election crisis, and we remember it because we got pulled out of school and there was a curfew, and it kind of kicked off in many ways. There was like a union strike and all this kind of stuff, and we realized that Nigeria coming out of this sort of brutal military dictatorship was the return to democracy, which my mum's generation were really sort of promised. And it's something that there was a lot of enthusiasm in the country, but unfortunately, Babangida, the president at the time, sort of pulled the rug at the last minute off an election that everyone was very keen on. Akinola, who was this like mercurial sort of candidate. So we realized what happened in that period was that the nation was also robbed of a sort of like father figure. It was kind of robbed of this idea of promise of like delivering on Nigeria being this amazing, fulfilling its potential as like the African giant, as Nigerians like to say. And we knew there was like a parallel between that, and we kind of did a lot of research and spoke to my mom, people who were sort of very invested in the election at the time, and we saw that on the micro was the boys missing this idea of promise, and then the country also like missing this idea of fulfilling its potential by having a political sort of like father figure. So yeah, during development, we kind of just like leaned into that and sort of worked with what we could to balance the story out and give us attention.
And so here you guys are two brothers writing the story together, and then when you're shooting, you've cast two wonderful real-life brothers, Goodwin and Marvelous Ekpo. I'm just curious how you found them and working with them, and just you and your brother, and then these two brothers, how much of that parallel, like how did you feel casting like actual brothers and not just like two distinctly different actors in that role?
Sure. It was really tough, to be honest, because we knew we weren't going to find kids in the States, and we knew we weren't going to find kids in the UK because there's so much difference between how like Nigerian heritage kids would play and relate to each other, whether they're here or in the UK. So we knew we needed to find kids in Nigeria just because of the sort of how they sort of relate to the environment is also something we needed to take into account. And we just wanted to find two kids. We didn't really care if they were brothers or not. We just wanted to find kids who we thought could do it, because it's quite a lot to ask kids to carry a feature film, you know. And then we were really lucky. I did like an acting workshop a year before and found an amazing acting coach called Seven Ndua, who did a workshop about play. So I was like, okay, cool, we're going to do some workshops for the kids when we cast a whole bunch. And then we did these workshops a few weeks before the shoot. We found some really good kids prior, went to like boarding schools, churches, like acting workshops, all that kind of stuff, and then some self-tapes. And on the day, we had a 2-day acting workshop. On the first day, the brothers were mislabeled. So like Godwin had his last name, typical Nigeria, like the Godwin was Egbo Godwin and Marvelous was Marvelous Egbo. So I didn't know they were brothers. But they were really tactile with each other, and like, you know, not really knowing what I'm looking for, I was like, something's building here. Maybe if they're friends and they just met today, they're really comfortable with each other, and that's something like we should just like keep an eye on, you know, like maybe they're besties all of a sudden or something, and. They were really encouraging of the kids. They were like, especially Marvelous, and someone said it to me on the phone earlier today that Marvelous is so focused. And you know, we were at lunch in London a few days ago actually, and Godwin didn't know what he wanted to eat, and Marvelous was like, you can eat off my plate. You know, that's the type of person Marvelous is, and he was doing that for other kids in the space. So we sort of were like, okay, these two come back, and then we cut like about 10 out of 20, and then the next day they were labelled right. And as soon as Rachel and Fumbi knew they were brothers, I think everyone that had an internal scream, they were like so enthused, like, oh my god, like this could be the one. I wasn't super sure, because we had these other kids who'd been in films and they were very professional and really sucking up to me, like, like every break, these two other kids would come up to me like, "Hey, Mr. Dragon," But the others, they were, God-given mothers, were really kind of shy and timid. But their mum would come with them, and I discovered their mum is also an actor and a screenwriter. And they remember the dialogue better than the other kids, and they would also be directing the other kids, like, "Do this, let me stand there," and stuff. And I have to shout out to the crew, because Sheen, Vague, Lala, Kemi, Fumbi, Rachel, my brother, they were like, they're the ones, basically, You're going to have to figure it out, but we're going to have to pick the two of them. And I'm really grateful, but in terms of the performance, I have to thank the sort of acting coaches, because I'm quite aware of my limitations, and knowing how emotional the story is, that I would be quite overwhelmed throughout the process. So I got a couple of acting coaches, Miss Evelyn Dua, she came right before we started shooting, and then we had a guy called Toby Clark and Andy Wyman, working with the boys, because I really wanted them to come out of the experience with some technique. It's their first film, they've never been in a film before. And I also have to thank Sope. I think Sope really, he's such a stud, like he really took the boys, he was a father to them on screen as well as off screen, running through lines with them, really encouraging them, berating them when they needed it, but yeah.
Like a true father.
Like a true father, yeah, 100%.
Oh, and then how did Choppy get involved with the film?
No, that's okay. I mean, have you seen Chope? He's literally a stud.
I know, that's why the first scene we see him and he's just wearing a towel.
Yeah, that's what I say to my female friends, I'm like, Chope is topless in the first few minutes. But no, we quite early on, we were thinking about casting, and then we really, as much as possible, we wanted to cast locally. We knew that much, but we just needed someone who would kind of have the range. And that's not to say like actors in Hollywood don't have the range, but we just needed someone who had the stature, who had this complete masculine frame, but equally who could just be completely soft at the sort of drop of a dime. And I remember seeing him in Brent Weeks' his house with Wumi, and I just thought, these are the best two actors I've ever seen. And then I think I must have been watching Gangs of London, and I sort of texted my brother. I was like, "Look at this guy." And my brother was like, "No," he's punching people and stuff. I was like, "Yeah, no, but watch his house. Trust me, it's really good." And then the whole team were really keen on him. I met him because we live not too far from each other in London, and we went to the park and had a completely awkward encounter with someone in the park. But Chope, to his merit, just completely pacified the situation, just really softly disarm this person, and at least I knew, he's completely talented as an actor, but this is someone I gladly spend 6 or 7 weeks with as a man, because I don't know too many people who are just complete, especially men who are complete empaths and can just read a room in such a loving and generous way. And we did a self-tape, and I think 50 seconds into the self-tape, I was like, yeah, this is a shoe, and he's going to do it. And the rest of the execs sort of bought in straight away. But yeah, he's a real blessing. He also came on as an exec, which shows how committed he was to the project.
Well, I'd love to take some questions from the audience if any of you are brave enough. Let's start here first, yeah?
Certain Nigerians, they're so great.
Not bad, guys.
Hi, my name is Bernard, I'm from Ghana, and I wanted to ask, throughout the film, especially at the beginning, I saw that there were these random moments of the animals and the city and then the car, and is that something you wrote in the script and were intentional about, or when you just started shooting, you saw some of those things and then the environment and it just inspired you and you put all of that in there, because it's spontaneous, but then ultimately it all comes together and it kind of presents the story to you in this beautiful way. So, yeah.
So the question relates to the all these kind of insert shots that you have, moments I'm seeing the horses, the cars, I think the soldiers from me as well. I noticed that. Is that something that you had written into the script, or did it come about as you were shooting that you saw oh, this would be good to get on camera?
Sure, great question. A lot of it was written into the script because we shot on Super 16, so we didn't have the the privilege of shooting loads of stuff or just breaking away and shooting some stuff. Some bits I heard from a really brilliant other director called India Salam, who she told me that she always works in an hour or like a day of play with the cinematographer. So I had said during production, I was like, oh, it'd be great if like in the main two locations we have, which is right at the beginning and sort of later on in the film, if I could have like a day or half a day of play with Jermaine where we just go and we just sort of shoot stuff. But I would say most of the things you mentioned, like the horses, I mean, yeah, we had to get the horses there, but most of the things were written in the script. Also, my brother is very literal. I take so many pictures all the time. I'm always like taking pictures and telling him, oh, can we work this image in, or can we work this into a section of the story that we need? So yeah, for the most part, a lot of it was written, and then we had those days where we also worked with stuff. Because I have also a bit of a background in doing like documentary stuff, so I knew that we would need those days if we were ever like caught short in the edit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sharon and I'm Nigerian. And I moved to the States 4 years ago, and I feel like in this moment, like knowing that you made this film and it feels like a love letter and it feels like something historic. And I remember watching an interview and you said it was generational, and I can't believe that there's a Nigerian film that's qualifying for like Best International Feature at the Oscars. Like things like this don't happen. So I'm very inspired by you, and I feel like my question is that what would you say? Nigeria really hasn't changed. What would you say? What would you say is the biggest takeaway that you wanted a lot of people in Nigeria to take from this, but also like people like across the world?
So the question is, what is the takeaway that you'd like the people from Nigeria to take away from this film, and also people across the world, noting the historic significance of a film? While it's going to be submitted to the Academy Awards, but also, as I mentioned, the first Nigerian film to play the Cannes Film Festival. So,
sure. Thank you for your question. I mean, I agree on many levels, but what I would also say is I feel like Nigeria has this thing of external stereotype being projected onto it, like loads of people, and even traveling the world, which I've been really fortunate to do with the film, loads of people are, Nigeria's dangerous, like Nigerians don't trust them, X, Y, and Z. And for me, I just think I think there are parts of Nigeria which are definitely like hairy, but I also think it's a bit of a false currency, because the Nigeria I know and love is full of people who have a complete sense of humor all the time, people who give you the shirts off their back, people who all they want to do is just have some banter and have some fun, really. And I think, more to your question, I would say that for me, making this film is sort of re-energized my love for Nigeria. I mean, it's a completely imperfect and flawed place, but what I would also say is that like the strength of Nigeria is the people, and will always be the people. And fundamentally, if the people, as a testament to our film, if people have structure, if they have resources, if they have encouragement, if they have infrastructure in place to sort of help them succeed, I think the sky's the limit personally. And I think ultimately, like human resources in Nigeria is like, not I'm obviously biased because I am Nigerian, but I definitely believe that like Nigeria, within the borders of that place, like we have some of the completely varied, like 300 dialects, like multiple tribes. We have a complete variation of people, and I think if there's a way to sort of give it some structure, we can really it can go really far. So I'd say so. That's what I'm most optimistic about, and that's what I hope people take away from the film.
we have a question right over here.
Yeah. Hi, Akinola.
Hi.
Congratulations again. This is
Thank you so
amazing.
much.
I flew in all the way from Texas for this, and I'm happen to be here for festival, so I was like, okay, might as well see this. So congratulations. This is amazing.
Thank you.
And I'm Nigerian as well, so. My question to you is, how difficult was it to shoot with those boys on set with, I see the beach, that was amazing, by the way. I love the shot that you decided to use. But how did you shoot in the midst of Lagos? Because Lagos was so rowdy, and I mean, I don't even know how you could even pass through with camera. So how did you get a chance to shoot, and how many days did it take you to shoot the entire production? Like how long was it for you?
Sure.
So could you talk a little bit about the challenges of shooting in Lagos and, any challenges shooting with the two boys?
Yeah, and then how long?
How long was it?
So I'll work backwards. So I think we had, I'm gonna say 30 days, I think we shot, something like that. I think shooting with the boys was a nightmare to begin with. I'm not even gonna.
They always say, like, never make a film with kids, with
Yeah.
animals, and you guys both in this.
Yeah, we set the dial to the hardest, basically. But no, like seriously, it was tough the first few days because obviously, myself included, like we're feeling each other out. Like there's so many debuts in this film. It's like mine, my brother's, Jermaine, our cinematographer's debut, the boys' debut. Duval, who made the music, his first film as well. I mean, anti-design, our production design is their first debut. You know, like so many first features. So we were all like freaking out, to be honest, And in the midst of this, we had these two sort of amazing young boys. So yeah, the first few days were really tough, but I think we were really lucky actually. And this might not sound lucky when I say it out loud, but the camera broke. So the camera broke in like the first few days. It was doing like this double exposure, and I think what that helped us do was like, okay, we're gonna have to shoot that scene again, which ended up not even making the film, but ultimately. It kind of calmed us down and like warmed the boys up, allowed us to go again. And I think after I realized, look, they're children, like they need to enjoy this experience as much as we're enjoying this experience. Everyone like chilled out a little bit, like we can't get Godwin to do the same thing in every take. So we're just gonna have to let Godwin do what Godwin wants to do, like not that we can help that because Godwin's gonna do whatever he wants anyways. But I think once we sort of relaxed, and the people who did have experience, Rachel, predominantly our producer, was like, you know what, if you feel you've got it, let's move on. And I think that's also the beauty of shooting on film, because we don't have a lot, so you have to be very intentional about what you do. There's loads of rehearsal, and then you just have to be sure, And then the last question was about shooting in Lagos. Yeah, again, complete chaos, but we're sort of really lucky, and I reference my brother, and I have to give credit to the whole production team who are based in Lagos. Like pretty much 80% of our crew work in Nollywood all the time, so they know the difficulties of traversing in Lagos. But we also, I say we, me, Wally, and Fumbi, we also co-produced a film with our company called Fatherland. And it mainly, I say that to say that we've been working in Nigeria for over 15 years. Like Fatherland only really came into existence maybe like 7 or 8 years ago, but we'd already been sowing the seeds because we'd worked in Nigeria, and we'd see, like, not to shame anyone, but we'd seen how like foreign crews come and work in Nigeria, how they treat Nigerians, and how they underpay like Nigerians, for example. So it's just something that we didn't want to necessarily be a part of. So we were like, okay, cool, we're just gonna have to sort of figure out a way where we work with the communities, we work with the area boys, we work with everyone, because we don't want anyone to feel locked out of our process. And the more you engage people and you give them structure, like, you really get the best out of them. So yeah, every day was like a mountain, like moving a mountain. But ultimately, I think the sort of years we sort of put in subconsciously shooting commercials and sort of documentary stuff really gave us as much access as possible to shooting in Lagos. Because also as a director, I think I'm quite protected, because the crew, like, they never want to tell me stuff, like they're always like sneaking around corners, and I'm always finding like what's going on. But ultimately, they were just trying to get the sort of best out of me in the situation. They were always problem solving, they were always like figuring things out, because they knew that we sort of had the support of the community when we were shooting, so we were never really it was a struggle, but we had a lot of support as well, I would say.
We have time for one final question. Yes, right over here.
Hey,
Hi,
it's Tony.
hi Tony.
Hi.
Hey.
Influences. Movies. What movies influenced you in this one? Because I see a lot of different things that I assume from different places. So I was curious what influenced you in this.
What films influenced you when making this one?
Sure. I don't know if it might be here all day, but what influenced me? I mean, I have to say, for different reasons, like loads of different films, I would say For how we like Black Skin, I have to say, I have to give a big shout out to Christian Epps and Hype Williams for Belly, because I think that's like a North Star of how you like Black Skin, I would say. Beyond that, I'd say Osman Sembene Mulade is one of my favorite films in terms of like dealing with sort of like mythology and community and keeping the camera close to faces as well. I would also say my favorite director is Korida, who did Shoplifters from Japan. I watched all his films before, because he just makes films about family in Japan. He's kind of unapologetic, and I would love to just have a career about making films about family in Nigeria. That would be like my dream. Beyond that, it's like getting a bit weird now, but I'd probably say like Tarkovsky's Mirror. A lot of the sort of unsettling aspects of the way he sort of made films is something that really sort of leaned into and tried to borrow from for the film. I would say not that just because we're here in Hollywood, but I grew up on Spielberg, like it was a time where like Spielberg couldn't miss, and everything he made was like incredible. And I would probably say in terms of like making generational films that everyone could see, that was what I was kind of really interested in. And then I have to give a shout to like Genevieve Nagy's of this world, because I think I'm not like super well versed in Nollywood film, but she's my favorite. She's I mentioned her in the interview because I want to work with her one day, because I just believe, and I say her to say that because there's so much talent in Nigeria. There's so many people. I mean, casting our film, there's quite a lot of people in there, but it was such a joy to cast in Nigeria, because everyone offered like a different take on a different role. We had like almost 2 people really close to being Mekos, and 2 people close to being Baba or whatever, but everyone's audition was flawless, but obviously Nollywood is a little bit more theatrical, but when you kind of get people to sort of dial it down, then you get those performances. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot. Like sound-wise, I'm really obsessed with Mika Levi, who did Under Your Skin. She did Jackie. She did Monos. Like, yeah, I can. You meet me after. I can keep going, basically. But yeah, and just to quickly say, I know we're probably out of time, but I'm really honored to be here. It's a real privilege to be here, but I'm really and directors get a lot of praise, but I have to say I couldn't really do anything without my cast and crew. They really are the sort of backbone of what you see that we made, because there's just so many days that they carried me through when I was having like minor panic attacks and stuff like that. But yeah, they're just really amazing, and it's a testament to all of them, all the HODs, all the people on ground in Nigeria, that we were able to create something like this. And a big shout out to our Mexican editor, Omar Guzman, who also just a wizard in putting things together. But
All right, well, thank you all for coming, and please give it up for